All right, I'm going to stop the timer. We are at the end of our 15 minutes. Hopefully you've got a chance to get some refreshment, stretch your legs, get away from AutoCAD. And so up till now, I'll just sort of do a little soft start, a little warm up, getting back into our class. We've inserted blocks into our drawing. If I hover over one of these doors, I'll hover over a door, and the tooltip is a block reference. So a block reference, whenever you insert one drawing into another, the drawing being inserted is considered by AutoCAD to be a block reference. Most AutoCAD users just use the term block. We don't add the reference in there. Kind of keep it simple. We used the insert tab and the insert button to insert the doors and the windows. However, we could have inserted all our blocks using Design Center. And Design Center, I think, is just an awesome tool to bring in blocks that live inside some other drawing. They're block references inside another drawing. And the idea there, in my mind, is if you're working on drawings of a similar type over and over again, you're going to use the same block references from time to time. So being able to access them in existing drawings is just a huge time saver, and hopefully that worked out okay for you. I have two blocks I have yet to put in. One is the toilet block in the hall bathroom, and this one is traditionally a little tricky to put in. There are a couple strategies you can use to put that block in. One is you can just draw a straight horizontal line from the end point of the vanity to the end point of the wall, and that will define a midpoint for us to snap to. As an example, I'll go ahead and go line, left click the end point of the vanity, left click the end point of the wall, and then when I double click my toilet block, I'll just go double click, and I've got my insert block dialog box up. I'll say OK, and I'll just find the midpoint of that new horizontal line I made, left click midpoint, and I'll pull over and then left click the end point of the vanity, and that puts that toilet in there, that toilet block in smack dab in the middle of the vanity and the wall, and then I can erase that line. I can just sort of window select that line and delete it. So that's one way. That's probably the most straightforward, most intuitive way that we could put that block in. If I choose to get fancy schmancy or schmancy would look like this. I'll delete this. From page 22 in the manual, we had this override menu for object snap, and I don't always go into that command because it's so obscure, but I'll kind of go into it now. I'm going to double click the toilet block, click. I'll click OK, and now I'm going to go into my override menu. The way I access the override menu, or the way we access the override menu, is hold down the Shift key and then right click the mouse. So Shift right click. Shift right click brings up this object snap override menu that allows us to choose for one and sometimes two clicks to override our existing object snaps. I'm going to use this mid between 2 points object snap. It's going to allow me to click one point, click another point, and AutoCAD snaps the block in between those 2 points. So mid between 2 points, one left click, two left click. So now I'm snapped to my insertion. Now I just need to define my rotation, and again I'll snap to that end point of the vanity again, left click, and there we have it. So that's kind of fancy schmancy because it's sort of out of sight, out of mind, that right click menu. It's Shift right click menu. One more time, I'll go double click toilet, I click OK, Shift right click to get the override menu up. I choose mid between 2 points, and I'll go left click one point, left click another point, and it gets me right in the middle of those 2 points, and then I'll left click the end point of the vanity to force my rotation to be sort of up, like so. I think the more intuitive of the two is to draw the line. Someone who comes from a board drafting background, we would certainly draw little marks and make little, light lines, and we'd snap to or we'd draw to those things and erase them and what have you. So that's one of the blocks I left out because it can be a little tricky putting that block in to begin with. And then I haven't brought the stairs in yet. I have not tried this yet. So I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to drag the stairs in. The block is called banister. I'm going to drag this in, and I'm going to snap it to the end point of my wall there. I hope it fits. And it seems to fit there. I just snapped it to the end point of the wall. Now that is currently on the P floor fixed layer, and that is not plumbing. I usually put it on the wall layer. It's not walls either, so I'll put it on the wall layer. But I guess if I were going to be a better AutoCAD person, I would create a stair layer. But in this event, I will just go ahead and left-click my block, open up my layer control window, and put it on the A wall layer. Click A wall. And then it kind of blends in. All right, so that's your blocks, our blocks, design center, questions on anything, repeat of anything, repeat of everything. What can I do? What's the move here? Okay. I think we're good. I'm going to dismiss my design center. I will say this about design center. If you've got two monitors, you can put design center on one monitor and have your drawing on the other monitor, so you've got such functionality to have design center up. A lot of times when I'm doing actual AutoCAD work, which lately has not been often, but I do have two monitors. I'll have on one monitor my ribbon, my drawing window, my drawing. The other monitor I'll have design center, my layer property manager, my properties palette. I think that's it. And it just allows me to have a ton of functionality in my AutoCAD, but I'm not losing any drawing window real estate because of the two tabs. I thought that was pretty awesome when I got my second monitor until I went to an office where everyone has three monster monitors, and then I was like, wow, they're way more awesome than I am. But those folks were really hardworking, and I'm just not prepared to work that hard, so I'll just stick with my two monitors. All right, so I'm going to dismiss my design center, and we can move on from there. At some point, we're going to use a command called hatch to fill in our wall lines. I'll kind of show you this in context. GD second floor plan. So I'm zooming in, and we've got the master bedroom has this sort of slate, or this solid, has a solid fill, and the rest of the floor plan has this pattern fill, like a screen door, or like a net, or whatever. The command is called hatch. Hatch doesn't always know how to respond to a block. It doesn't really know how to work with a block. And the stairs, if you brought the stairs in like I did, they're a block, so it might benefit us to explode the stair block. But I will say this, when I explode these, they're probably going to revert back to the layer they were created on. I think they were created on layer 0. Let's find out. I'm going to left click the stairs, left click explode, explode. Right, so this line work has reverted back to layer 0. I'll just use my match properties command to match the properties. Again, I probably should, if I were a better person, I would have a stair layer, but I don't, and I'm not. So I'm going to go ahead and click match properties. I'll left click one of my green wall lines, and I'll sort of window select some of that stair line work. I'm just turning any green, any white line associated with the stairs green. All right, so if you haven't already brought the stairs in, go ahead and do that. And if you want to, you can explode the stairs, and then we'll move on from there. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Man, is anybody else getting this wind? As you're inserting your...
We are down here.
Are you?
But I'm not far from you anyway, so...
Maybe about 5 hours, right?
Yeah, something like that, but it's like 30 miles an hour down here.
Yeah, it sounds like a freight train out here. Yeah, we're also we have a weird situation here. Around this building, we have like these vortices around the building. This building's like 11 stories tall. We've got about a 5-story tall garage, 6 or 8-story tall building behind us, and it creates these, even on a non-windy day, if you're unloading something on the wrong side of the building and the wind catches you, you're done for. I was unloading some folding tables once, and it caught me, and I was right on my butt, and luckily I was all alone. No one saw it happen, so there was no YouTube videos or whatever, so I'm okay there.
We had tornadoes tear us up on Sundays, eh?
Is that right?
Yeah.
We don't get those too often here, although we had one last year. They called it a microburst. They wouldn't commit to tornado, but it tore up. It was a neighborhood and like a camping area down by Newport News or Virginia Beach, somewhere down that way. And
yeah.
The weather.
No, we had a verified EF2, and we're in the process of fixing my grandfather's house, where a 150-year-old white oak tree was pulled out of the ground and laid on top of his house.
Wow! Did it come all the way through the main rafter? Was that the ridge board?
No, actually, it didn't go through the roof, and the reason it didn't is because the house was built in '59, and the lumber is so hard.
Wow.
The main trunk didn't actually hit the roof, but it completely folded over the front of the soffit and everything else, and the overhang. So it did quite a bit of damage.
Wow, that's something.
It went through the roof with branches in between the rafters, but it didn't break any rafters that we know of.
That's good. Oh, good. Yeah, I had a friend up in Cape Cod. I forget what part of Cape Cod he's on, but he just moved into this new place, and that last windstorm a few weeks ago, might have been a month ago, there was some tree was sort of being blown, and it pecked a hole. It pecked several holes into his roof, like 5 holes in his roof, and I mean, like the third night he was in the place, so it's kind of a bummer. So yeah, I hope everyone stays safe out there.
Yep.
All right. Questions on blocks, on block references, on Design Center, questions on anything. I'm going to click on one of my blocks. I'll left click on it, and I'll go ahead and click the list command. I'll open up my properties and click list. And the list command, as a refresher, list command is a tool that, let me see what the list command allows us to see but not change information. Basically, it allows us to see all the information about a selected object but not change it. So what I can see about this bathtub is it's a block reference on the layer P floor fixed. It's in model space. The tub, the block name is tub, and it's at a rotational angle of 0. All right, so the list command allows us to see but not change information about selected objects. If I had one of my blocks, let me say I'm going to take out the sink in my master bedroom. I'll insert another sink, but I won't rotate it. So here's a sink a block that I just brought in. I want to fix the rotation so it's standing up properly. Certainly I could use the rotate command to do this, but because this is a block, it has a known 0-degree angle. It has a trackable rotational angle. And by that I mean this. I'll left click the block, right click, and go to Properties palette. And on the Properties palette, I can see, I'm going to minimize some stuff here. I want right here, under miscellaneous, I can see my rotation is 0. Well, AutoCAD measures angles counterclockwise, so if I want this to rotate 90 degrees, if I want to stand it up to be properly rotated, I'll just type in 90 and press enter, and it's going to pivot right about the base point where I snapped it, and then it'll rotate into place. So the property palette allows me to see and change some information about my blocks or about my selected objects. So that's kind of a convenient little use of your property palette if you have a block that sometimes when I insert blocks, like I'll just pull this one out for a second. I'll go insert, window, up top. I think these are by order of insertion. I'll go window, I get the midpoint, and I didn't zoom in close enough, I get the end point. So my window is just off a little bit, right? I could use the rotate command to fix that, but if I left click the block, change this from a rotational angle of 273. So the right angle must be 270, right? I don't want it to be 0 or 90. I want it to be 270, and that fixes it. So a little tweak like that with your property palette can be a kind of a convenience, so you're not having to bang your head against the wall trying to rotate something just 3 degrees in this case. All right. Questions on anything to do with blocks or Design Center? Coming back to the PowerPoint, we haven't talked external references yet. So this is one of my least favorite topics, external references. Although there's some good stuff in external referencing, let me step over this topic for right now and come back to it. Not just because it's my least favorite, but I think there's some things that this is not a block, but it's like a block. I'm going to step over to day 3, part 4, and we'll talk about tool palettes. And I keep thinking I want to take tool palettes out of the class, but the tool palettes have some functionality, and I'll show it to you. You can choose how you feel about tool palettes. So I'm going to depart page 38 and come to page 40. So actually, I'm not even stepping over it, really. I'm stepping over it in the PowerPoint, but page 38 is Design Center, page 40 is tool palettes. So I need to adjust the PowerPoint, apparently. Let's see what the book says about tool palettes. Tool palettes provide an efficient method for organizing, sharing, and using blocks, hatches, and other tools. All right, that's not untrue. The graphic here on page 41 shows the View tab of the ribbon and the Palettes panel where we access our tool palettes. So coming back into AutoCAD, there we go, AutoCAD. I'm going to go to the View tab of the ribbon, View tab, and for me, I had to go to the View tab to get my Design Center. It was not on my Insert tab like most of you found yours in the Insert tab. The big button, the first big button on the Palettes panel is Tool Palettes. So you can click on Tool Palettes, and that will open up another palette. Basically, there's about, what, 9 different palettes in AutoCAD, and they're sort of unmoded dialog boxes. Where if I were in a dialog box like Print, the only thing I can do when I'm in a dialog box like Print is print. But with palettes, they're unmoded, so you can have the palette up and do other things. You're not it's not like a dialog box that keeps you locked, your attention locked to that dialog box. The very first time you open your tool palettes, it takes you to a tab called Modeling, and the Modeling tab has commands that you could use to create some unusual 3D objects like cylindrical helixes, or is that helii? I don't know that. 2D spirals, elliptical cylinders, just these are 3D commands. Constraints are rules you can put on your line work. Like you can tell a line it has to stay horizontal or stay vertical. Annotation, these are tools that allow you to place some predefined callouts or drawing titles on your drawing. And then finally, architectural. For the type of work we're doing these 4 days on this drawing, this is sort of architectural, right? Where we've got a set of imperial sample blocks, door imperial, window imperial, aluminum window is very specific, a fluorescent light fixture, stud, a toilet, a tree, a car or cars, and a door and elevation. So some of you may have to do elevations. The door and elevation will be very handy to not have to draw that from scratch. But I'm going to bring in the toilet, not because that's where my mind is. I'm not like always in the toilet here, but it's I look at the sink, this double sink with the handles, and you've got these circles within circles, and just amazing amount of detail in this sink, and then the toilet is a circle and a rectangle. So I'm not sure how one object gets so much detail where the other one gets so little. I'm going to bring in the toilet. You bring in whatever block you want. It's just a click and release to activate the block on your palette. So I'll go left click and release, toilet imperial, and I'll move this toilet into my drawing, and I'll left click to place it. So it's a little bit of a different method of bringing your block into your drawing. I just did a click and release, and I clicked and I placed that toilet there.
That's an elevation, Darren.
It is. You're right. I'm going to just say it fell over. It fell over. That's why I can see it. So, but if you're doing elevations, this is going to be very handy. What if you're not doing elevations? Well, any of these blocks here that has a lightning bolt on it, lightning bolts indicate dynamic blocks. What does that mean? Well, if I click on the toilet that came with our class, if you will, it's got one grip. If I click on the toilet that came on with the pallet, it's got 3 grips. The Basepoint Grip is one. You have a grip that allows you to flip the handle, which I guess you can do. I don't know why you want to flip the handle. Or this triangular grip at the bottom left side of the toilet allows you about 9 different display modes. So you're looking at elongated front, but you can go elongated plan. So now it's a plan view. Or if you have a small room, click that same triangle, go round plan. So it takes less space. So that's got more detail to it. And what I'm going to do is I'll click on this alignment grip. I'll click on that and I'll just start moving this. The alignment thing, the cool thing about the alignment, it'll allow you to align to any angle you're passing over. There we go. So I've just put that toilet in place. Actually, I probably have room for, where is it? Which one is it? There it is. I'm going to delete the old one, left click on the new one, and I'll change it to elongated plan, like so. Then I'll copy it. Left click this, left click copy. I'll just move it out. I'll get rid of the old one, left click and delete, and then I'll click on this one, get the alignment grip. There we go. So if you're doing floor plans, if you have a bathroom you need to populate with a toilet, I mean, this is a pretty nice block. This has detail on par with the sink now, where the fixture that we had there prior to was not on par. It just was not. Or the door. I've never even looked at the door. I'm going to click on the door in elevation. That doorknob seems awfully high. So the door, if I click on this, can be, right now it's a 6-foot door. Well, that's kind of a short door. I'll click on this, and how tall can I make it? I can make it 6'6", 6'8". How tall are these? These got to be at least 7 feet. 6'10", 7 feet's your max. That knob still seems high. And how wide can I make it? It's currently 3 feet. You can make it 3'4", or you can make it 2 feet. Very narrow. So the takeaway is you've got these blocks. AutoCAD comes with a handful of blocks that you can use. I would say you would use them in a pinch. They're not the blocks that, most of your drawings are made up out of. But look, I got to get a drawing together for a meeting in 20 minutes. I can throw some of these blocks here, some of these plumbing blocks, well, that one toilet block. There's a door block. I'll bring the door in, left click door. So this door, it's not quite like my door, and I'm not saying my door is better. I'm going to change layers there. I'll put it on the door layer. But you kind of get used to things. People who look at your drawings will get used to the blocks you're using. You'll get used to the blocks you're using. So if every drawing you've ever put together had a door that opened at a 45-degree angle, and all of a sudden you're throwing a door at a 30-degree angle, someone's going to go, not everybody, but someone's going to go, okay, what's different about this door? Why is this door open at 30 degrees while they're open at 45? Well, I can change the angle if I click on this door and I go to the little triangle menu, open 45, There we go. Now I've got a 45-degree angle, what have you. So tool palettes come preloaded with some blocks that allow us to just save a little bit of time, so you're not having to create everything from scratch. Questions on any of that? Questions at all? Okay. I keep thinking I want to take the tool palettes out of the class because they're samples. I mean, it even says it right there, samples. And like I used to do electrical design work. If I look at the electrical tab, I wouldn't use any of this stuff. Well, that's not true. There's one block here, the mushroom head push button I used to use for a data center. I forget FM 200. Like there was this. All my data centers would have the same design where if something caught on fire, you'd evacuate the data center and you had this big mushroom push button that would deploy a fogging system that would put the fire out, but it would also kill anybody inside the data center. So anyways, that's the one button I would have used. All right, questions on the tool palettes or design center or anything at all? I'm going to get rid of the tool palette. And I'll get rid of these blocks here. And zooming out. All right. We'll save the drawing and let's go on to our next topic. And now in the book, let me kind of maximize this. In the book, the next topic is external references. Now I'm going to step over it and come back to it. We'll take a look one more page. Come to page 44, 45 for me, please. And we'll talk about the hatch command. The hatch command. So on page 44, hatching, I mean, we're used to the word hatching. We're thinking of, I would think of eggs. Like I'm going to sit on an egg, I'm going to hatch it. But in AutoCAD, the term hatch is used to express, I'm going to zoom in here, a shading of an enclosed area. Hatch, when I used to do drafting on a drafting table with pens and pencils and T-squares and all that stuff, we called it crosshatch. I'm going to crosshatch the foundation wall. I'm going to crosshatch this detail to show soil or whatever. And we called it crosshatch because typically the hatches did cross. But some of the hatches don't cross. Some of the hatches are solid. So cross was removed from the name and now it's just hatch. So we're going to use the hatch tool to hatch just to sort of shade our walls. If I flip back into AutoCAD to the complete drawing, and there's this general note here, general note G, solid shading represents drawing from exercise number 7, bedroom drawing. So I want to use a solid in the master bedroom, and we'll use a different pattern for the rest of the floor plan. And that's why I asked you earlier to try to maintain a solid division between your master bedroom and the rest of the floor plan. At this point, I'm going to turn my grid off. I'll click grid, and that gets rid of that green line. And if I sort of pan down where the master bedroom walls meet the rest of the floor plan, I can see I've got a solid division between all my master bedroom walls and non-master bedroom walls. Ultimately, if you want to have one type of hatch filling your whole floor plan, that's fine, and that's the case. It wouldn't hurt to have no boundaries between the master bedroom and the rest of the floor plan. So I'm going to do a couple things here. Step 1, and you can do this with me, let's change layers. Change to your A-wall pat layer, A-wall P-A-T-T layer, A-wall pat. If you don't have it, let me know and we'll create it. Okay. Next, I'm going to turn off or even freeze all the layers except my A wall layer. So sometimes when you're hatching a drawing and you've got blocks and your hatch tries to get inside a block, it could crash your AutoCAD or lock your AutoCAD up, or AutoCAD could spin its wheels trying to think about what it's going to do. It's going to analyze the boundary. Some of the boundaries are quite simple. Some of the boundaries are as simple as that rectangle I just drew there. Some are a little more complex, so some of these things will take a little bit more analysis than others. Blocks are difficult boundaries sometimes for AutoCAD to analyze. So as a result, what I'm going to do, or not as a result, but in advance of having an issue, I'm going to go up to my layer panel, and immediately below my layer control window, I've got a bunch of little buttons. One is called off, one is called isolate, and one is called freeze. I'm going to use the freeze button. It looks like a snowflake next to one layer, and what it allows you to do when you start this command, it allows you to freeze one layer at a time when you click on it. So it looks like this. I'll click freeze. I'm going to left click one window, freezes the window layer. Left click one door, freezes the door layer. Left click one plumbing fixture. You see the pattern. I'll also freeze one of my shelf lines, or I'll freeze my shelf lines. Hell, I'm going to freeze that desk too. So I've frozen everything except the A wall layer and the A wall pat layer. I can't freeze the current layer. So take a second and do that on your AutoCAD drawing. And as you're doing that, I'm going to, of course, keep talking because I feel like I'm not earning my paycheck if I'm not talking. So this may be an unnecessary step. I mean, it's not a lot of work to do. It's not a real big hassle. But this could be an unnecessary step because if your blocks are placed properly, you're going to be putting your hatch objects, your hatch command will be popping shading in between the blocks, not a big deal. Sometimes the blocks sort of encroach on the boundary a little bit, and AutoCAD could crash, you could lock up, hatch used to be a real finicky tool to use. I mean, back in the past, when I was working in production, my boss would come into my office or my cubicle and say, "Hey, Darren, can you hatch the second floor plan?" And I'd say, "Can't you just fire me? Wouldn't it just be easier for all of us to do that?" And then he'd walk out, and I'd hatch my drawing, and we'd all laugh, blah blah. But so hatch has come a long way. They've made hatch a more efficient object. It's a more streamlined tool, and it's less prone to cause problems in your drawing. So me freezing my block layers is sort of a tip of the hat to the problems I had in the past, and probably not always necessary. Okay, that said, hopefully you've had enough time to freeze a couple layers, change to your AWOL PATT layer, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'll highlight where the hatch tool is. All right, so hatch, I just totally obscured it, but right there on the lower right corner of the draw panel is where hatch is. It's one of our unlabeled buttons. It looks like a square with some squiggles in it. It looks like a hatched square. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hatch my master bedroom wall lines first, or my wall inside of my walls first. I'll click hatch, left click hatch, and it changes my ribbon to be just hatch placement tools. The hatch that is set current by default is ANSI 31. AutoCAD is sorting alphanumerically, and it's just made the very first alphanumeric hatch the current hatch. Although solid is displayed ahead of ANSI 31. The experience of the people who create the software is that solid hatch is being used more often than ANSI 31 or anything else. So I want to start with solid. I left click solid, and now no longer is ANSI 31 highlighted, solid is highlighted. Then the command line, if you can see my command line, it will say pick internal point, pick internal point. To do that, I'm going to take my crosshairs and center them, or get the intersection of my crosshairs inside my wall boundary and I might get a preview. I am getting a preview, but sometimes I won't. But once your crosshairs are inside your boundary, left click to place your hatch. Go to your next boundary, left click to place your hatch. All right, so I'm going to click on all the boundaries for the master bedroom. So either I clicked on a line right there, so it said, hey, you're on a line, not between lines. So that's fine. I'll zoom in a little closer. I'll get one more boundary. So now I've gotten all the boundaries that make up my master bedroom. I'm going to hit enter, enter to end that command. So if you haven't already done so, you can switch into your AutoCAD and then add your hatch.
Does your hatch color, if it's solid, does that depend on the color of the layer?
It'll be solid no matter what. Such a great question. If I bring up my layer property manager, layer properties, so right now my AWOL pat layer is color 132, and there's a transparency value. Every layer has the ability to be transparent. Everything starts out at a transparency value of 0. 90 is the highest you can go. So I can take that hatch and I can click on the transparency value. Let's say I want to make it 60, and I'll hit. So if you can see my screen, watch the change. I'll hit OK, and it faded that transparency, which is kind of nice.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I answered my own question though, because I just changed the color of the wall of the layer, and it actually changed the color of the block of the hatch. But yeah, the transparency thing is good to know too.
It really is, because you can have a hatch in your drawing and it'll just totally overtake it to the point where your drawing reader looks only at the hatch. It's subconscious. So fading it back a little bit allows you to sort of even the playing field for all drawing objects. Then when you get into the plot mode, when you go to print, you can say, okay, well, my hatch is color 132. I'm going to just make 132 a screen color when it comes out of the printer. So it's faded to a certain extent. Okay. Does anybody need another minute or so for hatching the master bedroom? I know it's not a big space, but if it's brand new to you, it's just new, you know? Okay. So hit enter to end your command if you haven't already. Go ahead and hit save. We'll save the drawing. So if the worst thing happens and we have a crash, we haven't lost any data. And then we'll restart hatch. I'm going to restart hatch. This time I'm going to use a pattern, not solid. So on the pattern selection window, I'm going to hit the down arrow 2 times. So 1 click, 2 click, and then I'm looking for a pattern called ANSI 37, and only because I like it. And it's got, you can use whatever pattern you want. I'm going to click ANSI 37. Okay, I've chosen ANSI 37. Then moving your eyes right on either my screen or on your ribbon, there is a scale window that looks a lot like the 2 squares I had for the array command example. And the scale of this hatch is a scale of 1. If I left click and place this ANSI 37 at a scale of 1 next to my solid hatch, they look exactly the same. So the scale I'm going to use for my ANSI 37, I'm going to swipe over that 1 inch, and I'm going to change my scale to 12. 12, enter. And that puts enough daylight between my hatch lines that it's clearly different than the solid. And now I'll go ahead and click on the rest of my wall voids, if you will, or click in my wall voids. Oh, I was on a line there, so I got an error. It's fine. I'll OK out of that. And when I'm done, I'm going to hit enter, enter, and that ends my hatch command, and I will hit save. All right, questions on hatch. I'll just say this. I'll try to get ahead of a question. So my belief is you all dealt with floor plans in the past, and you kind of get it. A lot of my students who come to this class, they're just like the boss says, "Hey, guess what, Tom? You're going to AutoCAD class tomorrow." I was like, "What? What did I do wrong?" So that they just someone like that is probably amazing at what they do. They're great at some other aspect of their professional life, but they were chosen to go to AutoCAD class and have no understanding of why anything happens in a floor plan. Floor plans are kind of their own language, and in terms of hatch, we used to use hatch or crosshatch or whatever. Sorry about the fidgetiness. I'm trying to get myself centered. We'd use hatch to express to the reader what a wall or what some object is comprised of, what it's made of. Many of the hatch patterns have their own function. There's hatch patterns for steel, for cork, for grass, for gypboard. There's a bunch of different ones, earth, for different brick patterns and that kind of thing. So we're trying to express, typically when using a hatch, we're expressing to the reader what the composition of this thing is, what it's made out of. In this example, the example of our drawing, we're just trying to find different ways in this class to expose you to as many AutoCAD commands as possible. Here's how you use this tool. And sometimes we forget to tell you why you're using the tool. But in our example here, we've sort of called out solid shading represents a drawing from exercise number 7. We've sort of noted it out. Hey, when you see anything that's solid, that's exercise 7. Everything else is everything else. That's kind of how we're using it. We're still telling the story. It's just a different story. All right, I'm going to save my drawing. And questions on anything? Okay. All right. Again, there's no time limit on that. I'm going to go back up to my layer panel, and right below that button I used to freeze those selected layers, there's a button right below that called Thaw All Layers. I'm going to click on that. I'll click on Thaw All Layers, and it instantly brings back all those layers I had frozen all at one time. So that's kind of the convenience of using a tool like that. Some folks are like, yeah, do whatever you want to do. If you're controlling the visibility of your layer, turn some layers off, freeze some layers. I would just say, pick a path and walk down it. You don't sort of sidestep. If you're going to turn off a bunch of layers, turn them all off. The ones you're going to turn off, so you can turn them all back on later. If you have layers that you're going to freeze and you're going to thaw them later, freeze all the layers. That way you're clicking one button to bring them back, which is what I've done there. All right. Questions at all? Questions on anything? Okay. All right, let me do this. Let's do one more topic. I've kind of danced around external referencing for a while here, so I'm going to get into it at this point, and then we'll wrap it up for today. So I'm going to go back one page. I'll sort of zoom. So I'm going back to page 42. Is that 42? Yeah, page 42 talks about external referencing, and I don't know a lot about what you're doing, right? So I think a lot of what you're doing is you're going to monitor space for your agency, or you may be contracted out to some other agencies to sort of monitor their space. Folks who are typically in a role such as yours don't always get into external referencing. You may have an existing drawing and you work with that drawing and you're happy and life goes on. Sometimes you'll get drawings that are externally referenced, and it's kind of good to know, how to deal with an external reference. For my definition of external references, I'll refer to a block. I'll come back to my AutoCAD drawing. I've inserted blocks, and so have you. You've inserted blocks into your drawing. The blocks are windows and doors and so on and so forth. I can go out to my door drawing. Let me go to my door drawing. I'll just open it up. I'm going to make a change to it. Let's say I want this door to open the other way. So I'm going to turn my ortho on, and I've just mirrored that door, and I'm going to save that change. That makes way more, for some reason, that makes more sense to me. I'll save that, and I'll close that drawing. Well, when I do that, that's got no effect. That has no effect on this drawing. A block reference is a static reference or a static projection of one drawing into another. If I want to change this, you've seen we have to go into our block editor and make that change. Well, an external reference is like a block that has a live connection to the host or the original drawing. So usually you'll have one person who is in charge of updating the floor plan. If you've got a floor plan in a project, the floor plan is dynamic. There'll be changes. And if there's changes to our floor plan, if we've externally referenced that floor plan into our drawing, we'll get those changes. Those changes are made apparent to us. So I'm going to reference in a drawing. I'll reference in the modify commands drawing, and I'll get rid of it later on. So the graphics on page 42 show the insert tab of the ribbon current, and the reference panel is being called upon for the attach command. And here's how it looks, how it works. So I'll go to my insert tab, then I go to the reference panel and the attach button. Attach. So the first time you use this, if you're doing this parallel to me, if you're doing this beside me, when you click attach the very first time, it's going to take you to your documents folder. Now my documents folder is way full. It's full of stuff. So I've been keeping my GD class files, my general dynamic class files on my desktop. So I'll go desktop, and I've got two different general dynamics classes I'm teaching. I'm separating them by date. So I'll go GD class files for 2, and when I get in here, it says the folder's empty. Well, I'm like, that's BS. I've been working on this folder for 2 weeks now. I know there's stuff in there. Well, the reason it would say it's empty is because of the files of type window at the bottom of the dialog box. It's alphabetically arranged, and it's looking at the first alphabetical option, all image files, which I don't have any image files in here. I have drawing files. So I'm going to open up my files of type window, and I'll find drawing DWG. Drawing DWG. Select that, and it's like, oh, not so empty now. There's all those drawings right there. So I want to reference one of my drawings in that's part of the project. We're all part of the same project team. We're working on the same floor plan or whatever it is. In this case, whatever this modify commands is, I'm going to select this. That's not the one that I've been using. Let me go to the other one. It's 416. That's the one. We've been using that one. So I'll select modify commands and click open. And this dialog box is very similar to the insert dialog box, where you'll see the name of your file. You could browse for a different file. You can change the scale. You can change your insertion point. Usually, I think this, if you're doing this parallel to me, your specify on screen checkbox under insertion point is typically checked by default. So I've checked mine on. And then rotation, I'm not going to rotate it, I'm not going to scale it, but I do want to specify the insertion point. So all of that stuff is just like a block. The stuff that's different is the path type. Newer AutoCAD allows us to default to a relative path. Your path options are no path, relative path, or full path. Full path, I'll kind of show you. I'm going to open, if you're looking at my screen, I'll open up the details. So I'm taking this modify commands drawing, and I'm going to reference it into my residential drawing. And my modify commands drawing, my residential command drawing is looking in C users desktop GD class files 416 modify commands. That's a full path. That full path only affects me if I take this drawing, if I take both these drawings and I email them to any one of you. You have to take these drawings and put them in the same exact folder path or path, same path that I'm using if I'm using full path, in order for these drawings to come back together. Right? So if I give you the drawings, you've got to create a folder called Moored and Desktop and GD and blah, 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 blah. So by default, AutoCAD does not use a full path. AutoCAD uses a relative path. So if I take my two drawings and I send them to somebody else, they just need to make sure that modify commands and residential commands are in the same, they're in the same folder as each other. You know, they don't have to be in the same folder that I used. I have to have modify commands and residential can be in separate folders as long as those two folders are in the same folder, right? With a relative, right? So if I've got a folder called AutoCAD project, and in the folder called AutoCAD project, I have a folder called host drawings and another folder called reference drawings. So I've got residential in the host folder and modify commands in the reference folder. As long as they're in the same top level folder, using a relative path, they'll find each other. And there's no extra work required to reassemble these things, which, by the way, the work's not real intensive. I'm going to open up the path type and I'll choose no path. No path means these two drawings have to be in the exact same folder. I've got a folder called project, and residential and modify commands are in it, and they can see each other. They're right there together. If I never send my drawings off my network, I don't share these with somebody, I don't care what the path type is. It does not matter to me. I'll go full path all day long. All right, so that's one difference between a block and a reference. And then the other difference is down here where it says reference type. Your AutoCAD external reference will default to an attachment type. And what attachment type means is I attach modify commands to residential DRM. All the line work from modify commands shows up in residential DRM. If I later on I reference residential commands into, let's see, what else do I have? GD second floor plan. As long as I'm using attachment, all the line work from modify commands will show up. If I come back into this, modify commands. If I use overlay, if I overlay modify commands into residential drawing and later on reference residential drawing into GD second floor plan, none of the line work will show up from modify commands. The overlay reference type is only good for one generation away from the original. So that's the kind of the difference between those two. Folks who use the overlay method are typically referencing, they're doing cross references. If I'm working on a project with Kyle and Kyle and I are using the same background modify commands, he's going to reference my drawing into his to make sure I'm not getting in his way with my design. If he references my drawing into his and we're both using overlay, his drawing is going to provide the modify commands background. If we both use attachment and he tries to reference my drawing into his drawing, AutoCAD will say, whoa, you can't have two external references in the same place, timeout, command fail. It doesn't hurt anything, but it just stops the command from happening. So if there's any potential for you to need to reference your drawing into your team members' drawings, you would use overlay and not attachment. All right? And I don't know if there's any questions on that, but that's kind of why I don't like this topic. It's just so, oh, I'm sorry, I nodded off there. You lost me at click this button. So let me go ahead and I'm going to hit OK. I'll hit OK, and I'm going to left click. And so I thought I had checked specify on screen, and I had, but I must have unchecked it the second time around. So if you are doing this alongside of me and you check specify on screen, just move your mouse around, left click to place your reference somewhere, and you'll see the reference in your drawing. Now, by default, externally referenced drawings are faded a little bit in AutoCAD, only on screen, to sort of alert you to the fact that this drawing is a reference drawing. It's not a live host. It's not part of the host drawing. You can't edit this drawing the same way you would edit. I can't edit modify commands the same way I would edit my residential drawing, right? And that's kind of by design. We want somebody, like one centralized person, making the edits to that reference drawing. And then if there's changes, like if I go into, I'll open up and go to modify commands, wrong one, desktop, 416, I'll go into the modify commands drawing. So if I go in here and I make a change, like I take out all the line work in the middle and I save that, I'll go save. When I come into this drawing, hopefully you can see on the bottom right corner of my screen, I'm being alerted to the fact that that file has changed and it may need to be reloaded, which is what that hyperlink lets me do. If I click the hyperlink, there, that change has just been realized in my drawing. So typically we're going to use that external reference feature in AutoCAD when we have a drawing that's subject to change. We're using this drawing in more than one file, being used by more than one person or more than one file, and we don't want to have to manually change this drawing every time a change occurs in it. That kind of helps automate the process. All right, it's a little bit clunky. I wish it was a little bit more straightforward than that, but questions at all on external references? Questions at all? Did I lose you all? You're all asleep? That's the worst topic. Okay, I'm going to just undo. I'll undo until that thing's gone. Undo, 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 undo. One more, two more. All right, so I've undone, and hello. Oh, hey, Todd's there. Awesome. Did I just wake you up? I didn't mean to wake you up. I probably put you to sleep first, and then I woke you up. So does anybody know if the drawings you're working on will be externally referenced? Is there a high potential for that? I guess you'd know if the drawings in draw base were referenced. Let's see. I was trying to talk, but I can't. Oh, do I have you muted? I don't think I muted you, Todd. I don't have you muted though. Are my speakers off? Playback devices, open sound mixer. Must be on my, yeah, I don't think I've got anyone muted. What can I answer? Or did you already try to tell me you guys use that? Let's see. I was just going to say that we use reference files like to show architectural drafting and MEP. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So you are familiar with it. So just in case anyone didn't know this, Todd said that we use reference files like to show architectural drawing on an MEP file type. So it's pretty common. The floor plan. Imagine we all talked at the same time. Right now, what was there right now? There's 8 of us. If all 8 of us talked at the same time, it's really hard to understand what's happening. Same thing with a drawing file. If every discipline talks at the same time, you can make it work, but it's hard to understand. So if you have a architectural drawing, here's an architectural drawing, and I can have HVAC on. I can reference my floor plan into an HVAC drawing, reference it into an electrical drawing, reference it into an interiors drawing. And we're having one conversation at a time with our drawing. Only the floor plan, the architectural and the mechanical shows, only the floor plan and the electrical shows, and that kind of thing. And it kind of makes the reading experience for whoever we hand the drawing off to, it doesn't overwhelm them with information. So that's kind of a common theme. So that's kind of the technique you would use to reference in a drawing. Similar to a block, but it's a live block in your drawing. All right. Questions on that? If you didn't do it parallel to me, don't worry too much about it. If you get to a point where you need to build, if you're building a reference drawing, feel free to call me and I'll walk right through it with you on the phone. The first time it might be counterintuitive. After you do it once, it's a piece of cake. All right. Questions on anything we've covered so far today? Questions on blocks or design center? Any of the line work that we put together? Tool palettes, hatch? All right. All right, let me do this. I'm going to launch the last quiz, a little quiz for today. Looking for day 3 afternoon. I'll select it. I'm going to launch this. And when we're done, if you're at a good stopping place, save your drawing and we'll start again tomorrow. Day 4, caps and gowns tomorrow. Wow. Okay. I am going to, we're 100% submitted. I'll go ahead and click close. And we're back. And I expected that to be under 100%, but we have 100% submission. It looks like, Bill, you're either back or you never left or something.
I'm back.
Okay. You snuck back in. I didn't see you come back. I'm still recording, so you'll have. I'll make sure this is out on the YouTubes, on the internets tomorrow, and by 7:30, and you can pick it up and view anything. We didn't get it. What did we get into? Hatch, tool palettes.
I came in, I think, right after you brought in the staircase. I kind of did it my own way.
Okay, doesn't make you a bad person. Yeah, there's so many ways to do stuff in AutoCAD. Doesn't have to be my way. I'm no Frank Sinatra.
That particular block reference had all the other than the staircase, it had a whole bunch of other stuff in it.
Cool.
I brought it in, but I erased it. I blew it up, and then exploded it, and then erased the others.
I gotcha.
I'm sure you did it a different way, but.
Well, I just tried. I didn't. It wasn't much different than how I brought in the. I don't recall deleting my bathtub, but I did. Could you send the YouTube? Yes. Let me make a note of that. So Perry asked me to send a YouTube link to him. I'll send the YouTube link for the last portion of class to anybody who wants it. YouTube link. I have this thing where I take notes. People say, "Hey, will you do this?" I take notes and I jot it down so fast I can't read my own handwriting, but I'm going to get this right. YouTube link to Perry and Bill, and I don't think anybody else has asked at this point. But you can always ask me again later. It's no big deal. Cool. So there's where's my attendees list or my chat list right there. You bet, Perry. No problem at all. Cool. All right. We're at 4 o'clock. We've made, I think, amazing progress today. I hope today was a good day for you. My boss keeps asking me how online training is going. I think it's going well. I hope you think it's going well too. And so tomorrow, we'll probably start off pretty early on getting the drawing ready to print so we can determine scale, and then we'll start to create text styles, we'll create dimension styles, and we'll print the drawing. So there's not a ton of topics left, but I also want to show you how to import a PDF. I think it's a pretty exciting thing. So if you're good to go and you've had enough AutoCAD for today, you can go ahead and save your drawing, and we'll log out, and more fun with AutoCAD tomorrow. Thank you, Bill. Thanks, everybody.
Hi.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Just read.
See you, Todd. See you, Jason. Isn't that funny? Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'll end the training, and I'll start processing the video so I can link it or get it on YouTube tomorrow. So good night, everybody. Hope you have a great night.